A record-smashing offense. A reinvigorated defense. A quiet confidence fueled by their unquestioned leader. The Sooners are riding high once again. But now, there's no more sunshine and roses. It's time to set aside the glitz and glamour. It's back to business for the Crimson and Cream. With 4 straight Big 12 titles behind them, the quest for a 5th begins now. These Sooners know there's a target on their back, more so than ever. So into the arena steps the Juggernaut's first challenger. Sooner Nation, this is your tradition. This is your team. This is Big 12 football. This is Gameday U.
Welcome back to Game Day U. After a week-long hiatus brought us inside due to spotty weather, we're still feeling good. You might not have seen us in the show, but we saw each other in the meantime. I'm only kidding. Welcome. I'm joined by my lovely analysts, Sam Brown, Shiloh Sellers, and William Sule. Guys, how are we feeling today?
I'm good. I miss football, honestly.
I know,
it's
I'm
weird kind of
excited.
sitting on a Saturday and just watching all the games and being like, I'm
Where's
not
my
going to the stadium anymore.
Yeah.
But football's back in Oklahoma, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I'm ready for the Sooners to be back in action because the Denver Broncos are disappointing me every Sunday night. So
0-3.
ready for some Saturday
They're
football
terrible.
for sure.
The Broncos
They're
are terrible.
so bad. It's so bad.
Sule and I have been sitting through that together for a while now. It's not fun.
Oh yeah, the two of you. Well, I'm excited that it's Big 12 play. Like I feel like it's down to the nitty gritty, and that is what I'm excited for. I feel like we've been waiting so long. We've seen so much play. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Oh, you had a bye week. Texas Tech had a bye week. How do you think we're reeling from it?
I mean, obviously a bye week is a good time for every team to come back and make some adjustments, look at what you've been doing over the past few weeks, and decide what needs to be improved upon. 249 penalty yards through 3 games. That's ridiculous, honestly, for a team of this caliber, and I promise you, Coach Grinch, Coach Riley, and the rest of the gang are not happy about that whatsoever. So I imagine this team has done a lot of mental preparation for this game, done a lot for the next couple of weeks, trying to remedy that problem. In addition to that, going for history tonight, the 900th school record win is on the line tonight. If we beat Texas Tech, it's the 900th win in program history, putting OU up in a category with only 6 other teams. Notre Dame is also at 899, could, if they beat Virginia today, get to 900. That's a big deal.
That's big time.
That's history. That's incredible. There's history on the line, as is becoming tradition here at OU with Coach Riley. History on the line again.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this is going to be a big game. I think that they've had so much time to kind of take a break to look at, I'm sure they've been watching film all week long, to really kind of dissect. They have been playing messy. That's where a lot of those penalties are coming from, along with kind of needing to focus defensively on making sure that those opponents are not breaking loose the second half of the game. If you look at OU's kind of score breakdown, it's always the second and third that just are the blowout quarters, and then the fourth, they kind of tend to get it back together. But for sure they need to be focusing on playing all the way through and keeping their stamina through the game.
Yeah, definitely playing a full game. And the thing with these games is there's always going to be fireworks. I mean, last year in Lubbock, Alan Bowman goes out for Texas Tech, and they almost mount up a comeback and pull it off and get the upset. The Sooners come out there with a win, and then, of course, in 2016, the Baker Mahomes game. Everyone knows that game. We don't really need to dive into that one anymore. I feel like we have enough.
PTSD,
over the
PTSD,
last few
honestly, it
years.
was stressful.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, those are stressful games, and this defense definitely needs to be on top of their game. The offense needs to keep on rolling, shore up the things that they've been hoping to shore up over the bye week, and should be an exciting matchup for sure.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Big 12 play
Yeah.
get underway. But just because there was a bye week doesn't mean the media didn't get an opportunity to speak with players and coaches. Let's take a look.
It was unique having a bye week this early, certainly. But I do think some benefits for us, a chance to take a quick back look at the non-conference games.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us. You know, it gives us time to really focus in on our technique, you know, our fundamentals, things like that, communication things too. So I think it's very important for us.
Yeah, it's very different. You got to approach it different because winning a championship here in this league is not easy, and we try to approach every opponent with our best foot forward, try to get the job done.
We got to be better. We got to be better at what we do, and for us, the bottom line is just making sure that we're hitting our standard and exceeding our standards. So I feel like as long as you have that, keep that same focus, that same mentality, you know, we're gonna keep getting better.
There, you know, in the past, in certain conferences, there's teams where you're like, oh, we're going to beat them. But I feel like every week in the Big 12, you got to bring your A game because, especially at a place like OU, you're gonna get everybody's best shot. So, it's important for us to, go out and put our best shot out too.
All right, we're 3 games in. Here's bye week number 1. Let's look at our team. Where are we at? What do we need to work on? What kind of rest do we need?
There's still lots of improvement, not just me, just the whole offensive line just coming together as a unit, and we're more focused on playing together as one group rather than individual performance right now.
We're far from where we want to be. Why would I look back now and find any satisfaction on the little? I can't do that. We're not going to do that.
Shiloh, you hit the nail on the head. It seems like they're still looking to improve, and Jalen Hurts is the captain of improving. It seems like he's never satisfied with how this team is doing. Guys, are you guys satisfied? What do you guys think of this, of what they said?
I mean, it's another week, some more rat poison, honestly. This team is getting into this rhythm, and I think it's really from the first time. We've had some dynamic quarterbacks in this program, and for the first time, I think, and credit to Jalen Hurts, that even the coaching staff is mimicking what Jalen Hurts has been saying since week 1. Improvements are all that they can focus on. They can't look back and see what they've done well because they're not where they're supposed to be. And like I've said, they have things to improve upon. So I think that you can look from top to bottom, offense to defense, coaching staff, players, they're all saying the same thing. We have to improve if we're going to get to where we need to go. Because while this team has been so successful in the Big 12, so successful in the past 4 years in that regard, they haven't gotten where they want to go because the national championship is what they want. Yeah. And while they can dominate the Big 12 all they want, it doesn't mean anything if they can't take that next step, and I think that's what they're trying to emphasize this year.
I 100% agree. From the very start of me covering OU football, I felt as though there was almost a sense of complacency in the sense that being the good, amazing Oklahoma offense was almost good enough. And a college playoff contender is not just an offensive team. It needs to be well-rounded. It's got to have everything down to special teams working in their favor. And I think that was one thing that OU, their mentality was lacking. And the great thing, Jalen Hurts coming in, we've had so many new defensive coaches coming in. I think that the defensive mentality changing with those new coaches has bled over to the offense. And I think Jalen has also been one of those guys kind of leading the pack and saying, I come from a school where nothing's ever good enough, and so nothing's ever good enough. And I think that it's doing OU some good.
Yeah, he said him along with the rest of the team have said there's room for improvement, and they kind of have a point, to be honest. Like you said earlier, they still have yet to put together a full 4 quarters of quality Oklahoma football, dominant Oklahoma football. And I think what we're starting to realize is this team really is not going to listen to the noise, whether it's positive or negative. They don't really care. They're in their own little bubble. They're in their own little environment, and they know what they've got to work on as a team. And that mentality is good to have, honestly. It's not a bad thing to have, because you find yourself, becoming more, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, you find yourself not listening to the hype so much, and you can focus on your play. This team has been so much more focused on their play since Alex Grinch and this new coaching staff have come in, and I mean, it shows on the field. They've definitely improved.
Yeah. I'm really liking this team so far, and I really love the mentality that Jalen Hurts has. He's never, as you said, he's never satisfied. And it seems like he's always striving for that next level of greatness, that next level, and always pushing this team to achieve. How much further do you think this team can achieve? Do you think?
I mean, I'm sure the coaching staff has its own goals, and that's kind of why they're trying to block out this noise, because the coaching staff, Alex Grinch, Coach Riley, they're some of those brilliant minds in college football. Why wouldn't you listen to them and nobody else? I mean, when you're listening to people like Paul Feinbaum or whatever, if you're listening to guys like that about whether or not you're a good football team, then you are destined to fail, because they aren't the most brilliant minds in college football. Like, at the end of the day, Coach Riley has people lining up at his door every offseason to figure out what in the world it is that he's got going on here that is making them so successful. And if they are taking that to heart and realizing that, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, he's pretty good at what he's doing, he's pretty good at his job, then they can internalize that and say, hey, it doesn't matter what other people are saying. It doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. If we hit the goals that our coaching staff sets for us, when we look back at film and we're like, hey, we did this well, but we got to improve in these areas, then that's how, that's what they've been doing with Saban. That's what they've been doing with Belichick. That's how these great coaches command that respect. Yeah. And if Coach Riley wants to get to that point, he's got to demand that of his players. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that one big key is that there's been distractions. When Baker was here, there was the planting the flag. There were
which was awesome, by the way.
Which was cool.
Just
Which
for the
I'm
record,
not complaining
for the
about.
record, it was awesome.
But there were, I think social media also comes into play when it's distracting to the players. They've got to see that. I mean, can't you imagine having the whole entire nation be able to criticize you instantly? I mean, yeah, it's hard to not to focus on what matters, and that's gameplay. I think that is what's really changed, is that the focus has come down to, we don't really care what anybody else has to say. And I think that it came finally after getting so close 2 years in a row and failing at the same point, back-to-back years. I think that you have to come to a point and say, okay, we're obviously good enough to get to that point. Why can we not finish? And I think that that's what this focus has really pulled out of them is, all right, we've got to figure out what we can do to finish this.
And to your point, like really quickly, like I think the distractions they talked about, Baker with his obviously different antics, Kyler with the baseball dilemma, distracts from the team. And Jalen Hurts was a Heisman frontrunner and then said, no, I don't want that noise. I don't want that attention. And while it may be hurting him in the Heisman race, it's helping this team.
Yeah, definitely sky limit for that.
And especially in the national landscape, I think he's still very atop the Heisman candidacy right now. Later on, we'll hear from Meredith Mulkey a little bit more in the football in the national landscape and in the Big 12, as long as report cards for the Sooners. Stay tuned.
Gameday U. I'm Meredith Mulkey on top of the porch at Campus Corner on the University of Oklahoma with an incredible view behind me of campus where your Sooners will kick off conference play in just a few hours against Texas Tech. Now, speaking of conferences, the Big 12 has faced a lot of criticism in the past few seasons regarding their defenses, OU being among the top of that list. Last season, OU defense was ranked number 114 in the nation and last in the Big 12, allowing 453.8 yards per game. After the Alex Grinch takeover, the Sooners' Speed D is ranked 53rd right now, giving up 100 fewer yards per game than last season. This Texas Tech team will be OU's toughest challenge thus far defensively, even though Tech's offensive lineup isn't what most were expecting after the Raiders' starting quarterback Alan Bowman went out with a shoulder injury. But a Tech QB changeup is nothing new for OU, as the Raiders were in a similar situation last year playing the Sooners when Bowman didn't return after halftime, leaving OU to face backup Judd Duffy, who completed 9 of 17 passes, throwing for 139 yards with 2 touchdowns. The Sooners could see another Tech QB along with Duffy, as grad transfer Jackson Tyner is also expected to take the field today. Between the two, only 4 passes have been attempted this season with only 1 completion. But don't overlook this game, as it'll be a chance for the Sooners defense to prove themselves in the Big 12. Now, consistency will be key for the Sooners as they take on Texas Tech today, and you can watch it all go down right here in Norman at 11 o'clock. Back to you, Christian.
Thank you for that, Meredith. Beautiful view behind you at the porch. We have a similar competing view behind us. Guys,
It's a fake building.
I don't know if you guys remember the last time you guys did report cards, but if you were to give this Sooner team a report card, what grades would they have running down the report card?
I mean, it has been a minute, that's for sure, since I've gotten a report card, and don't tell my parents because I haven't been sending them home. I'd give the Sooners a B+ so far, and here's why. Obviously, the offense has been clicking. They've been finding themselves a rhythm over the first 3 games, but it's 3 teams that should have come and gone without a blink of an eye for this team, honestly. I mean, the Sooners have been rolling all year so far, but that's nothing out of the ordinary, so I can't really put them in the A. The defensive line has been a big part of what I think has been shown a lot of improvement. They've had almost as many sacks this year so far as they had the entirety of last year, and they've just looked better. The eye test has been a lot better. Negatively, obviously, like I said, no real contest. The strength of schedule up to this point has been abysmal, but, you know, you can't really blame them for that. It's going to get a lot harder with the Big 12. And then finally, the offensive line still needs a lot of work. Like I said, 249 penalty yards up into this point this year. And a lot of that has been holding, false starts, things of that nature that the offensive line really needs to fix if they're going to take the next step and continue to compete in the Big 12.
Yeah, you can't blame them for the no real contest point. I mean, they just got to play who's in front of them. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame them, but at the same time,
UCLA was supposed to be good when they scheduled this game.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like a negative point to them, but I can't put them. You can't be an A if you haven't played anyone worth an A. Honestly, that's just my opinion.
Interesting.
Someone might disagree.
Well, on my report card, I gave him an A-, so I do agree.
All right.
Disagree.
All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with the negatives so we can end on a positive note.
I like that.
The biggest thing for me also has to be the offensive line. I mean, 24 penalties in 3 games. And I was keeping tally one of the games, I believe it was against Houston. And I mean, like 10 penalties in the first half or something. Like, it was ridiculous. That's 2.5 touchdowns, 249 yards. That's points. Like, that's ridiculous to me. And it's just messy play. The second thing has to be defensive backs. I mean, you've got to keep it contained, and that's what it just all boils down to. I feel like too many times we have big breakaway runs in the late half of the game, and offenses that really shouldn't be doing that to us. And then third, the last negative thing for me definitely has to be special teams. For kickoff returns, OU needs significant growth. OU averages 16 yards per kick return, and that is by Trey Brown, who is ranked 12th. I mean, I just don't think you can be that low, and I talked about earlier being well-rounded. You can't be that low on special teams and think that you're going to be a real contender, because when it comes down to it, you got to get everything you can. Positively, we have another Heisman contender. Third year in a row. Jalen is doing quite an amazing work, in my opinion. He's rushing, netting 373 yards, averaging nearly 10 yards a carry. He himself running the ball is a first down. I mean, that's amazing, especially because so many people doubted Jalen. 1, his passing ability. He can pass. We learned that. And 2, everyone wants to say this dual threat. Whenever he played De'Aaron King, everyone said he's a dual threat. I didn't see that out of De'Aaron King. I don't know if you guys saw that. I saw that out of Jalen, and nobody was saying that about him. And I think that goes to show, 1, the quarterback coaching Lincoln Riley has. It's like no other. I think that OU, that's really where their marks of excellence come into play. Another big thing is their receiving core. I mean, CD, Rambo, Hazelwood, Sermon, Basquin, Bridges. I could keep going, and that's amazing. Normally you have a duo, you've got a really great running back, but we have that multiplicity when it comes to the receiving core, the running back game. offers so many options on top of Jalen always being an option when that offensive line is not doing the hottest. The third thing, of course, is turnovers. I don't know if I don't remember off the top of my head what the stats were last season for turnovers, but they sure are not as many as we have right now.
They had 6 interceptions last year.
That's crazy.
One of them was by their defensive end. They already have 4 this year.
That's crazy to me, and that's amazing. And it just goes back into that mentality, the mentality of excellence, the mentality of not being complacent, the mentality that Alex Grinch has brought to OU. I think Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley, that's a dangerous duo.
Yeah. And I agree to what you said. They are so heavily improved on the receiving end of things. And against South Dakota, they had 10 different guys score touchdowns. Granted, one of them was a turnover, another one of your points by Buki, pick 6. But it really goes to show how much depth and how many people they can rely on. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, you guys touched on a lot of things, so I'll kind of have to breeze through my stuff. But I'm going to be the pessimist in the group, not even that much. I'm going to give them a B.
Okay.
Positives, you know, a lot of stuff of what you guys said. They're finding really creative ways of getting players the ball. Like you said, 16 different players have caught a pass this year. 10 different players have scored a touchdown on offense. And then Buki, of course, the pick 6 on defense. They're second in the FBS in points per game, first in offensive efficiency for the 3rd straight year. Lincoln Riley is finding ways to get these players the ball. I mean, the toss to CD Lamb is just golden. I loved watching that, the touchdown. Charleston Rambo has done some great things on the jet sweeps and stuff like that. So the offense is rolling as always, but that's not really a shocker. The shocker to me was how disrupted the defensive line has been. I mean, Sule talked about it earlier, but tied for 21st with 3 sacks per game, and they're tied for 29th in the country with over 7 tackles for loss per game. Ronnie Perkins is continuing his development. And how about the other sophomore, Jalen Redmond, breaking out as well, 4.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. They're getting in the backfield, they're getting pressure on the quarterback and on the runner, and as a result, it's forcing those turnovers that the defense has been able to take advantage of so far. In terms of negatives, the offensive line, obviously, we talked about. I'm going to have to touch on them a little more because there's not much to nitpick. But you talked about the penalties. One thing I think people are overlooking is the fact that Jalen Hurts has had to improvise at times. We're lucky because he's so good at doing it that it overshadows that kind of negative side of things. But the offensive line has struggled, only 2 sacks given up, but he's been under pressure at times. And then some growing pains on defense to close it out. I think there's still some tackling issues, you know, some bad technique, just bad habits, stuff the defense needs to get over. The secondary not looking back at the ball, stuff like that. It's little things. It's really nitpicky. It's hard to really dive in and find something that they need to improve upon. But on defense, they still got a little work to do. It's obvious they're still kind of getting those bad habits from last year. But Alex Grinch and that defense is trending up. The offense has been up for God knows how long now. So I mean, they keep this keep this going. I mean, they're gonna cruise to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, you say our defense is trending upwards, but Texas defense claims they're trending upwards as well. They played Oklahoma State. They won 36-30. Guys, they always claim that Texas is back. Texas always claims Texas is back. Nobody else. Do you guys think they're back, or are they? What's up?
I mean, I don't really know. You can't really say definitively, but you got to go with no. I mean, you can't be back until you're consistently winning big games, and they just have not been able to do that so far. And I mean, they beat OU last year, which was their big marquee win. But I mean, come on, they haven't put it together when they needed to. I mean, the OU games in the past 4 years have had a margin of victory of 6. So obviously, whenever these two teams meet, they're really pushing each other to the limit. But this Texas team, Sam Ehlinger has I think made market improvements this year, and this defense is good, but I don't think they're great. I mean, they've given up 400 plus yards in both their games against decent teams this year, and 500 to LSU and almost 500 to Oklahoma State. Like, they have looked bad, but Sam Ehlinger and this team have moved the ball well on offense. They're putting up a lot of points. The problem with me is I just don't think their defense is as good as it has been in the past. Like, the reason that they were such a fearsome opponent for Oklahoma in the past years is that they have been such a good defensive unit, and this team has looked abysmal up to this point. I mean, they gave up. I mean, you can give LSU and Joe Burrow as much credit as you want, but it's still LSU. Come on, you shouldn't be giving up 500 yards to a team like that.
They're playing well.
That's the spread offense. That's the new era.
I mean, okay, like I don't buy into that, and that's a whole different conversation. But Texas, to me, is only as back as their victory. The history favors the victor, and they have yet to be that on a big stage. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in Dallas this year. But I have to go with no.
I'm gonna have to say that I wouldn't necessarily say that they're back. I think they're on the road to recovery. Obviously, this is one of the best Texas teams that we've seen in a very, very long time. But Sam Ehlinger, he speaks for himself. He's a good quarterback. He can make plays happen when it needs to happen. However, I think it also comes down to messiness. Like, their game seems messy. They seem like they are scrounging for victories, and that's what I saw in the OSU game. I mean, yeah, their defense, especially in the red zone, was pretty nice. They were able to hold Chuba as much as they possibly could, but by the end of the game, Chuba Hubbard was taking people out. I mean, Longhorn guys were being carted off that field. Yeah. So if they were back, then those guys are out of there, because, I guess they have a bye week to recover, but I definitely don't think that they are well-oiled enough to really pose a big threat. However, I think that a big rivalry like OU Texas, it is an outlier of sorts. There's so much hype that goes on against that game, and Texas does have that comeback kid mentality, and that's what you saw in the last game. I think that is what we could see throughout the rest of the season from them, is a comeback at the end of the game, but not a full dominance, and for that reason, they are not back.
Yeah, I mean, Texas, like Shiloh said, they're only as good as the wins that they pick up. And so far, we haven't seen them be dominant like we expected. We thought they're the second best team in the Big 12. We think they're still the second best team in the Big 12, but who knows at this point? And now you look at their secondary, 3 starters out for at least 4 weeks, including Caden Stearns, their star safety. That's a big loss in the secondary. And I'm going to throw this out now because of these injuries. Sam Ehlinger's not 100%. He has injured ribs as well. Colin Johnson's been hampered by a hamstring. Not sure if he's going to play next week at West Virginia. There hasn't been a win by 15-plus points at OU Texas by either team since 2013 against Texas. I will say right now that Oklahoma will win by 15-plus points in the Cotton Bowl on October 12th. That's how far I'm going to go. I'm very confident in what this offense is doing, and also very confident in what Texas defense is.
It's Toasty sitting next to you.
Isn't doing. Hey, someone's got to come out with the hot takes. If it's going to be me, then it's going to be me. I'm going to do it.
We do miss Colin Kennedy on the show.
Right.
Hey, someone's got to fill in for him. Yeah. So I think this offense is rolling right now. I think the defense is going to want vengeance after being, as you can see by the video, absolutely embarrassed last year in the Cotton Bowl, and as you could see at home when you were watching the game. But I think OU is going to come into the Cotton Bowl and come out with a big win, a statement win for them.
Wow. I mean, this is one of those games it's hard to tell because it's a rivalry, and both teams are going to give it all they've got, so we'll have to see. But after the break, we'll hear from Brooke Mursky and the studio team as they talk about the heroes and zeros of this past week. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Game Day U. I'm Brooke Mursky in Gaylord Hall Studios. Plenty of fantastic college football action on the slate for Week 5. But before we get to that, let's take a look back at the best plays from Week 4. Here's Parker Thune.
Thanks, Brooke. Our top 5 plays begin in Ypsilanti with Eastern Michigan hosting Central Connecticut State. 18 seconds to go, Devils up 1. All they have to do is get a punt off, but Matthew Sexton comes off the edge. He gets the block, picks it out of the air, and walks into the end zone. A one-man wrecking crew. The Eagles snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, 34-29, the final. And number 4, Utah visiting USC. This won't be the last time you hear Matt Fink's name today because he was dialed in. The Trojan third stringer somehow escapes and fires downfield to Amon-Ra St. Brown, 31 yards to the house. Fink would throw for 3 scores on the day, and USC prevails, 30-23. On to play number 3, the craziest game we've seen in a long time. UCLA trailed Washington State 49-17 in the third quarter until the Bruins unleashed a scoring barrage. It's 56-53 when Kyle Phillips fields this punt and goes to work. He knifes through the Cougars' coverage unit, and 69 yards later, UCLA's on top. The Bruins would go on to win 67-63 in a shootout for the ages. Houston and Tulane. This one's tied with 12 seconds to go. Now, Sooner fans may remember Jalen McCleskey from his days as an Oklahoma State Cowboy. Well, now he's with the Green Wave for his senior year, and he calls game. Somehow stays on his feet despite the contact touchdown with 3 ticks on the clock. 53 yards for a hard-stopping Tulane win. But our top play comes courtesy of the Pitt Panthers. Final minute of the game, trailing by 6. Pat Narduzzi takes a page out of the Doug Peterson playbook It's the Philly special. 4th and 3, and it's Aaron Matthews to quarterback Kenny Pickett. The trickery vaults the Panthers past the Knights 35-34 and hands UCF their first regular season loss since 2016. So there you have it, your top 5 plays of Week 4. Brooke, Dylan, Caroline, and Zach, take it away.
Thank you, Parker. Like you said, I'm here with Zach Padilla, Caroline Grace, and Dylan Rivera. Guys, how are you feeling today?
I'm great. I'm excited for football today.
I'm excited for Big 12 play, finally.
Yeah.
Full slate, Sooners at home against Texas Tech should be fun.
Awesome. Let's get it started with our first segment, Heroes and Zeros. Guys, I want to hear from you who you think did really well this past weekend, who you think kind of didn't shine so much. So, Zach, let's kick it off with you. Who was your hero this past week?
Well, my hero, to start it off, talked about him a little bit already in the top plays of the week. But Matt Fink, the quarterback of USC, started as the 3rd string to begin the season behind JT Daniels and Keaton Slovis. But they went down, and he missed his first pass to start the game against Utah. Went 8 for 8, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns after. He was finding people left and right. Michael Pittman Jr. had 10 receptions, 232 yards, and a touchdown. That's someone that I think he can rely on. And, I mean, Matt Fink had a crazy offseason. He was in the transfer portal. His dad said he was going to transfer to Illinois. He ended up staying at USC because that's his childhood team. It's his favorite, and he wanted to come and finish what he started at USC. He's been backing up Sam Darnold, JT Daniels last year. He's finally getting his chance. I think he's making the most of it.
Awesome. Caroline, what about you? What do you think?
So my hero is someone who has been resting in the swamp for way too long. At 6'5", 239 pounds, a redshirt junior. That's right, it's Kyle Trask down at the University of Florida. Felipe Franks goes down late in the 3rd quarter, and he's carried off the field. The Gators are down by 11, but who comes in to save the day? Well, that's number 11. He executes every play like he's been going over his playbook since the day he was born. He has a well read of every play as well. His short game is hot, but his deep ball is on fire. As you can see, he is a very smart player, and that is something that you can't necessarily teach. So that's something that's going to go a long way for this guy, especially now that we're uncertain about Felipe Franks' health at this point. I think he's really came in and got the job done. He's had a remarkable 1 1/4 game, considering throwing for 293 yards, especially considering he joined the team in 2016, where he had no playing time. He was a redshirt freshman. And then in 2017, he still didn't have any playing time. And then last year, he showed up in 4 games as a backup quarterback, and now he's thrown into a losing game late in the 3rd quarter. And I mean, he comes back and wins it for his team. I think he's really getting the job done there.
Sounds like a hero to me. What do you think, Dylan?
Well, my pick's a little bit more obvious than you guys' picks have been. Mine's one of those Heisman frontrunners, actually. I'm going with Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. Jonathan Taylor went for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns against Michigan. This one from just short, just a couple of yards out, a quick run into the middle, and he kind of got stuffed in there, but reaching that ball across the line, he gets his first touchdown. And then the second one just absolutely obliterates the Michigan defense, and you'll see it here in just a second as that hole just explodes through it. He just goes right through it and gets all the way into the secondary and takes off, turns on that burst of speed, and here it is, just right through him. I mean, he's gone. Like it's a touchdown from there. Jonathan Taylor is 4th in the Heisman race right now, and one thing that I think is really useful is he's starting to get used in the passing game a little bit more. He had 8 catches, 95 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2017, 8 catches, 60 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2018, and now in 2019, 6 catches, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns already on the year. So that's just through a few games. So he's already becoming a weapon in the passing game as well. So we see Jonathan Taylor being one of those front runners for the Heisman for a reason, and I think his performance against Michigan really kind of proves why he's in that conversation. And I know that it's tough for running backs to get the Heisman Trophy. It's really kind of a quarterback's award per se, but Jonathan Taylor is one of those guys that deserves to be in the conversation and definitely can be among those top 3 names at the end of the conversation at the end of the day.
Yeah, he's hot right now.
Yeah, that's funny. I love the sound effect you use because I don't think there's a better way to describe him. He kind of reminds me of Mark Ingram a little bit. And I think that as the year goes on, we're really going to see him excel in his position. And I think the offense that they're running right now has really set him up to do so.
Well, and he follows a line of so many great running backs at Wisconsin. I mean, you think of Melvin Gordon, Monty Ball.
Churn them out.
Yeah, and Ron Dane, so many great Wisconsin running backs, maybe some of the best in history, if we're being honest. And so he just joins that category as a great runner himself.
And I think Wisconsin, if they're going to come out, if they're going to shine any year, I feel like we've been waiting on it for a while, but really I see them, maybe I can see them, getting back in gear this year. Maybe not the best, but I definitely think that their team is taking those steps to get back into the powerhouse that we've all seen before.
Yep. So we talked some great players. Let's kind of flip the mood a little bit. Who were your zeros this week? Who do you think just could have done so much better or just was so down?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with old football coaches returning to college football for my zero for last week. I have Mac Brown to start it off in UNC. They were at home against Appalachian State, and it did not go the way Mac Brown wanted to. They started off 2-2, which definitely could look like maybe an improvement from last year, but they barely beat South Carolina. They were down 20-9 after 3 quarters. UNC scored a game-winning touchdown against Miami with a minute left. They could easily be 0-4 here. So I'm going to have to go with Mac Brown for the first half. And the second half would have to be Arizona State, even though they won last night, and Herm Edwards. Herm was a 7-point favorite at home, 7.5-point favorite at home, finally ranked number 24, 3-0, undefeated, looking like it could be a great season. And then Colorado comes in your house, kicks this game-winning field goal. They had a little bit of time left to maybe make something work, but this is the last play of the game for Arizona State, just an incompletion, nobody around. And so I went with old coaches, Mac Brown and Herm Edwards, trying to return but not going too great.
Well, I'll say one thing. I really do like the culture that Mac Brown is now building at North Carolina. It feels like there's a lot more energy on that Tar Heels team. I'm not going to say that obviously it's a winning program now or anything like that or any type of powerhouse out there in the ACC, but it feels like they're having a lot more fun playing football.
Yeah, I think the track maybe that these teams are on is better than how they played last week because, Mac Brown, like you said, he's been there, he's back, so he's got that back. And then Herm Edwards, he's a player's coach, so the people love him. So I think they can turn it around, but just not this early.
That was a really creative zero pick. What was your thought process behind that?
Just watching college football, saw a couple old mad coaches on the sideline. Thought those are a couple zeros
right
there.
Who's your zero?
Okay, so my zero. Well, if you went to bed at a decent hour, you missed it. You missed Washington State blow a 32-point lead against the same team that OU went on the road and annihilated. So how does one blow a 32-point lead? Sloppy play across the board. They started out so strong and just terrible defensive coverage. UCLA drives the ball down their throat, one missed tackle after another. There we go, 2. Guys, that should have been an easily stopped play, and it just wasn't. Anthony Gordon had 9 touchdowns, but does it really matter when you have 6 turnovers? You heard me right, 6 turnovers, of which led to 28 points for UCLA. And even their special teams, on a punt return, something so simple as 1 missed tackle, 2 missed tackles. Well, here we go, 3 missed tackles. 4 missed tackles. Come on, guys. You're just letting them run it down your throat. I wish that I could put the blame on one unit, but I just can't. This is one of the craziest games I have ever seen. And it reminds me of when I was a kid. I used to play backyard football with my brothers, okay? They're much older than me, and so, they were kind of outnumbered if I was on their team. So there was a rule that if my hand so much as just touched the ball, it was a catch. And if my pinky finger so much as scraped by them, it counted as a tackle. And I bet Anthony Gordon was wishing those rules applied to him.
Oh my gosh. This all sounded pretty bad. I don't even know where to go
it was just one disaster after another. It's just one of those things where you're just like, how does that happen? Come on now.
Yeah.
All
Dylan, what you got?
Well, my zero is Nick Starkel from Arkansas. It's a little interesting how you guys went with old coaches and Washington State. I'm going for one player. I'm going at one guy. Nick Starkel at Arkansas transfers from Texas A&M just so he could throw interceptions for the Razorbacks. That's what he's there for. San Jose State was 1-11 last year. Let me start by saying that. They ended up losing this game, and Nick Starkel, although he had 356 pass yards, which was 10th most last weekend, that's a good stat to have. You could say, okay, well, I'm proud of myself for that. You can't overlook the 5 interceptions against a San Jose State defense. That's just terrible. San Jose State gave up 34 to Tulsa the week prior, and we all know that Tulsa is not the top program in the nation. So if Nick Starkel is going to transfer away from Texas A&M to go to Arkansas and expect playing time and expect to be this star quarterback, let me tell you, man, you're dead wrong, all right? Because you're not a good quarterback. That's the problem. You're going to throw interceptions like that. It's just going to end up being a bad season for Arkansas all over again. And let me add, San Jose State is currently ranked 102nd in total defense. 102nd. That's lower than OU was last year, I believe. So, I mean, it's insane to look at it as Nick Starkel transfers as somebody who thought he should be a starting quarterback at Texas A&M, and now he's just throwing interceptions.
Arkansas is the scum of the SEC. And I hate to say that, but if you think in your head that what you're doing right now is going to get you anywhere, especially in the SEC, you're wrong. And the problem with Arkansas is that they haven't made any changes. Like, come on, guys. You've had, a losing season the past 3 years in a row, and you've done nothing about it?
Yeah.
It's just pitiful.
Well, let me tell you, we're just getting started here, but when we come back, we'll go to 3 and Out. Dylan, Caroline, and Zach answer 3 of the most prominent questions from across the college football landscape. Don't go anywhere. Game Day U rolls on when we return. Welcome back. Brooke Mursky here in the Gaylord Hall Studios. Still to come in hour 2, we'll preview the top matchups on the schedule today. We'll also chat with Sooner football beat reporter Vic Reynolds as the Sooners get ready to take on the Red Raiders. Right now, though, it's time for 3 and Out. Guys, you'll be asked 3 questions about college football. Just give me what you got. Okay, question number 1. We'll go September surprise. What team surprised you throughout the duration of this past month?
They started off ranked well, and now they're ranked 4, but I'm going to have to go with LSU, not only because they're undefeated right now, but their offense is kind of revamped right now. Joe Burrow looks like a different quarterback. Last year, he had 16 touchdowns and 5 interceptions all season. He already has 17 touchdowns, 2 picks this year, 80% completion so far, which is out of this world. And he's got wide receivers like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Terrence Marshall Jr. Jamar Chase had 10 catches, 229 yards, and 4 touchdowns last year. He had 313 yards and 3 touchdowns all of last season. This offense has really changed, and the Joe Burrow and the wide receivers are really showing that, along with the running back talent they have, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think LSU has come out of the gate as a real contender in the SEC and can actually keep up with not only, they usually have the good defense, but they usually don't have the offense to match. But this season, I think it's going to be the complete opposite. Joe Burrow is going to keep it up, maybe not as great, but that defense needs to shore up if they want to compete with Bama and Georgia in the SEC.
Joe Burrow, 100%. Statistically right now, is up there with Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, all those guys. He's among the best.
That just goes to show that if you put the work in during the offseason, you're limitless, but I guess not everyone's going to catch on like Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Caroline, who surprised you?
So I'm staying in the SEC as well. However, that's not really a good thing. I'm not impressed. I'm rather disappointed with the Texas A&M Aggies. Kellen Mond and the Aggie offense struggled to even get a first down. I thought they would fall short to Clemson, but I expected just a little bit more of a fight. And I mean, oh Lord, I'm sorry, defenses are just killing me nowadays. And they definitely could not afford those turnovers. I really expected them to top Auburn, especially at home. But you know, the Aggies just don't look like the complete team that they do. Look at this right here. I mean, it's at home, guys. Everyone talks about the 12th man, home field advantage when you're playing at College Station. But I feel like Auburn just drive the ball down them, especially considering I thought Texas A&M's defense was one of the best in the conference. But I guess I was proven wrong, way wrong. And it was an easily won game that turned into an upset at home. Now, granted, I understand that they have one of the toughest schedules in the country, especially being a Power 5, top school. But for all the hype that they had around their corrections that they made during the offseason, none of it has come out. Like, I haven't seen anything that has impressed me or anything that they really needed to focus on and fix that has been fixed. And unfortunately, it just looks like Jimbo Fisher has just not gotten back in the groove, and they have a long season ahead of them.
Agreed. Dylan, going from there, what do you think?
Well, my pick actually ended up losing last night, so we're gonna pretend like that didn't happen. But I'm going with the Cal Golden Bears. They came in last night as the 15th ranked team in the country. They beat Washington in week 2, 20-19. Garbers last week, not this week obviously, because we're not going to talk about this week, threw for 357 yards and 4 touchdowns against Ole Miss in a pretty good game for the Golden Bears. That one, they squeaked it out and got the win there in the SEC. Evan Weaver is a guy on the defensive side of the ball who is just a monster. Last year, he was top 5 in solo tackles. This year, number 1 right now in solo tackles. This Cal Golden Bears team could be a serious contender for the Pac-12 championship. I'm not going to say serious contender in the college football landscape, but definitely in that Pac-12 picture. They're 11 for 11 in the red zone this year on the offensive side of the ball. Every single time they get into that red zone, they're going to score. It's almost guaranteed right now. And so Cal is got to be up there as a surprise for anybody, really, because I can tell you for sure I did not expect them to come out and be one of these top 15 ranked teams.
Yeah, well, let's move into question number 2. I feel like at the University of Oklahoma, we love talking Heisman, don't we?
Absolutely.
we just had 2. I mean, potentially could have a third. We got a lot of time before that happens. But who do you guys think is leading the Heisman race right now? We'll start with you, Zach.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of good quarterbacks and running backs like Jonathan Taylor out there that are in contention. But I'm going to have to go with Justin Fields, the quarterback at Ohio State. He's shown why he was such a high recruit with Trevor Lawrence coming out of high school, 1 and 2, the number 1 dual threat Justin Fields was. But he looks a little bit like Kyler Murray when I watch him sometimes. He busted this 51-yard run. Kyler had a couple against Texas. He had one against West Virginia that really showed you. And through his first 4 games, Justin Fields has 1,030 total yards, 19 touchdowns, no interceptions, only 1 fumble lost. Kyler, through his first 4 last year, had 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 2 turnovers. So the touchdowns are there for Justin Fields. He's really looking like he can do whatever he wants in this Ohio State offense. Their margin of victory is one of the best in the country. And the road ahead, he has some Heisman games. He plays on ABC 6:30 at Nebraska, then Michigan State ABC 6:30, Northwestern on FS1. He has a lot of primetime games, Wisconsin, Penn State, at Michigan to end the season. Justin Fields is going to have a lot of opportunities unless J.K. Dobbins cuts into it at all. But Fields is going to have a lot of Heisman chances here.
Nice. Caroline, back to you.
So we do love our Heismans here at OU. And I've got the kid that the entire nation is looking at. Not only is he talented, he's successful, and he's hungry. Sitting, waiting patiently at the top of my Heisman list is the Crimson King, Jalen Hurts. Now, being from Alabama, there's something I have noticed about the community in regards to Jalen Hurts. I've heard things like he's uninteresting or has a bad attitude. I've even specifically heard that if we win the national championship, I don't want him to get any credit. But before I get into my spiel about all of that, let's take a look at this video. Okay, well, we're having some technical difficulties, but that is okay. So, okay, we're going to go back to the video now.
For yards in a debut, and you're also the first Oklahoma quarterback in school history to throw for over 300 and rush for over 150. So can you be somewhat happy?
Or do you enjoy the process, or is it just all about, achievement, the next thing, getting a little better?
You can't really look at, you got to have goals, you got to have goals to achieve great things.
Guys slide and get hurt. I mean, that can happen too. But what have those conversations been like over the years with you?
I can get hurt walking down the stairs right now, so.
Jalen, you've now got more incompletions than touchdown passes, 7 to 6. Can you get that back on the high side, that ratio?
Just try and go out there and execute,
So there's a quote that sticks out to me when thinking about Jalen Hurts, and it's, adversity causes some men to break, others to break records. So you want to talk about an attitude? You want to sit here and say that Jalen Hurts has this attitude about him that is just unfriendly or uninteresting. Well, the media has taken Jalen Hurts' name and ran it through the mud. This kid had his, everything taken out of his hands last year. And now that he's being successful here at Oklahoma, the critics want to sit here and act like they've been standing behind him this whole time. Open your eyes, Oklahoma. This is a kid who could have immediately transferred. But what did he do? He stayed. He got his degree. He stuck around because his team expected him to be there. But you want to talk about an attitude. This is the classiest football player that I have seen in my lifetime. We're not talking about a Tim Tebow. We're not talking about a perfect quarterback situation. So I'm sorry if you're in the media and you think he's boring. You're the problem. Start asking insightful questions. He is not Baker Mayfield. He's not Kyler Murray. He's not going to sit here and be happy by winning these games by 30 against unranked teams or teams that don't matter. This is a kid who's been to the national championship. He knows what it's going to take to win against an SEC team. So I'm sorry if he's unsatisfied with what he's looking at now, but guess what? He's been there, he's done that, and he knows exactly what it's going to take. So adversity will cause Jalen Hurts to break records, and we've already seen that in the first 3 games. So he's accumulated 880 yards and 9 touchdowns, but you can be talented all you want. You cannot coach a kid to have the drive to want to, and whether you guys see it or not, whether Oklahoma sees it or not, whether the media sees it or not, Jalen Hurts is hungry, and he wants this Heisman Trophy, and he wants this national championship.
Okay, I'm going to kind of tear your whole thing down for a
Rat
second.
poison.
This is not the Oscars. This is a football award. So the drama and getting the adversity and all of that isn't going to win you the trophy. It's statistics. I can't even get the word out. Because we know men lie, women lie, numbers never lie. Right now, Tua Tagovailoa is on top of the numbers game. Tua Tagovailoa leads the country in so many different stat categories, or he's at least in the top 5 of so many different stat categories. Passer efficiency rating, he's at 225.3, third only 0.3 behind Joe Burrows. Responsible for 108 points, that's 4th in the country. Jalen Hurts is only responsible for 78 at this moment. 325 passing yards a game, that's 9th in the nation. Hurts is 15th at 293.3. 17 passing touchdowns is tied for 2nd. Hurts is tied for 19th with 9. 1,300 passing yards, 5th in the country. Hurts tied for 48th with Justin Fields, actually, at 880. So right now, Tua Tagovailoa is on top of the stat boards. He's up there in the top 5 of every single category. And oh, by the way, this is the guy who stole the starting job from Jalen Hurts at Alabama. Tua Tagovailoa has been at the top of the conversation for the Heisman Trophy since the preseason, since before this season even started. Since last season, he was among those top names. The only guy who was even maybe arguably against him was Trevor Lawrence. And now to this point, Tua Tagovailoa has not done anything that says to me he is not still that top name.
So here's what I have to say to that, and there's a couple of factors that you didn't point out. Number 1, Justin Fields and Tua Tagovailoa have both played an extra game than Jalen Hurts. Number 2, you put Jalen Hurts in an offense that actually adapts to his style and is an opportunity for him to explode. Tua won the job because that's the kind of offense that Nick Saban wanted to run. Jalen got the job here because that's the kind of offense that Lincoln Riley wanted to run. And you said that, yeah, this isn't the Oscars. Yeah, adversity only goes so far. But when you're in week 8 and Alabama's down playing Arkansas State University for the 3rd week in a row, and Jalen Hurts is playing Texas or, those other big teams that we're going to face, that's when adversity comes into the talented part. He's going to explode. Meanwhile, Tua will probably go down with an injury where nobody will be there to save him. And then what are you going to do? And then what are you going to do when you have Jalen Hurts who's playing all these teams and exploding with all these stats and all this yardage, and then you have Tua who's playing Southern Miss or Arkansas State, like I said before, Tulane.
You can only play so many non-conference games, so I think they only have 1 non-conference game for the rest of the season. The rest should be SEC schools.
Well, and I don't know that I would classify the opponents that OU's played to this point as any top dogs either, but anyways, we'll touch on that in a minute.
But that's the point that I'm trying to get at.
We still have more to discuss. We'll talk in the break. We can argue all we want. But let's talk SEC, guys. Currently, there are 5 SEC teams in the AP Top 10 who are all 4-0 right now. Where do you think this conference is going, Zach? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that this can go depending on how some teams play out over the course of the season. But I think in the end, it's just going to be the same thing. We're going to see Bama and Georgia again in the conference championship playing each other. I just feel like Tua, like Dylan was just saying, Tua is just too good. He's going to keep going. Jerry Jeudy, Ruggs, all these wide receivers they have can't compete. And Georgia, their side of the SEC just isn't as talented, I feel like. LSU could get there, but I just feel like that defense has some holes in it that they need to take care of before that you think that they can beat Bama or Georgia. And so I think that'll happen. And then I think LSU, they will beat Florida and Auburn, but I think they'll lose to Bama. I think Auburn will have some struggles just trying to figure out everything with Bo Nix. Not that he's terrible or anything. I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. But I just feel like that they'll struggle a little bit. Florida, they have Kyle Trask, which could be good, could be bad. I mean, I'm not sure if Felipe Franks was like amazing or anything. So Trask, if he could even be a little bit better, then I think Florida can compete on that side of the SEC. But I think at the end of the day, it'll just be Alabama and Georgia, like always.
So something's got to give, and it is a big toss-up, but Joe Burrow and the LSU offense is going to defeat the Auburn Tigers and the best defense in the country. Meanwhile, they are going to come out on top against both Alabama and Georgia at home. Meanwhile, prior to that, Alabama is going to host LSU in a toss-up where the Bio Bengals come out on top. And have I even mentioned Florida yet? Let's break this down a little bit. Florida still has to face Auburn, Georgia, and LSU. If not 3, that's at least 2 losses on their schedule in the future. They'll fall out of the top 10 and their playoff dreams will be crushed. I just don't think that they are a mature SEC team yet. So now Alabama is always a powerhouse, but what I've seen this year is not impressive. Their defense is not a top tier unit in my opinion, and if they keep playing stagnant, I see both LSU and Auburn Tiger offenses running over them, and not to mention the defense that both teams have to stop QB Tua Tagovailoa. So Georgia, quite frankly, is a team that I haven't figured out yet, and to be honest, the teams they have played and the teams they are going to play, other than maybe 2 or 3, do not impress me. I have considered that they beat Notre Dame, but then again, is that just because Notre Dame lived up to the overrated team everyone thinks they are? Their team statistics are also below every top-tier team, such as the ones I previously named. However, their schedule is not unbearable. Although a rivalry, I still think that Jake Fromm will run over the Gator defense. As for the Auburn Tigers, here are my thoughts to those who specifically categorize Auburn as a little brother because they don't buy into Bo Nix. Well, I just don't think you have to. We obviously saw how Gus Malzahn can substitute Joey Gatewood when he needs to get the ball down the field, and their wide receiver unit is no stranger to success. Their defense can give any offense in the nation a run for their money, which is exactly why I believe they're going to take down both Jake Fromm and Tua Tagovailoa at home. So lastly, LSU is a force to be reckoned with. To keep this short, I see them going undefeated and winning the SEC. Georgia will be my team from the East, and I wish that I could make a playoff prediction, but it's just way too early to guess. All of these teams still have to play each other. All of these teams still have to, weave out some of the difficulties that they've had in their season. So I just think it's too early to make that decision. But if I had to go with a set, this is going to happen, this is going to lead to the SEC, or end in the SEC, that's what I have.
Well, I kind of answered the flip side of this question. You guys said what will happen. I'm kind of making the point of what has happened to this point and why we have so many SEC teams in the top 10 right now. And that's because of scheduling. Right now, a lot of these teams are playing those FCS schools and teams that really aren't in the big picture. And one thing that Nick Saban said a while back was he would like to see college football go to where Power 5 schools are only playing other Power 5 schools. I don't know that I agree with that so much, but I do want to see a lot less of these FCS games. I do want to see a lot less of these small opponents versus big, powerful, giant type of games. To this point, LSU has played Georgia Southern, Texas, Northwestern State, and Vandy. Bama has played Duke, New Mexico State, South Carolina, Southern Miss. Florida has played Miami, UT Martin, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Georgia, Vandy, Murray State, Arkansas State, and Notre Dame. So to this point, right now, in 46 games with an SEC team on the field, only 6 have been against a ranked opponent right now. So out of 46, only 6. And right now, Auburn has played 2 of those 6. So I will acknowledge that Auburn has had probably the toughest schedule up to this moment. And one of the top 5 in the country, I know that for a fact, is Auburn has one of the toughest schedules all year long. So the SEC has got to improve on its early season matchups if they're going to see different numbers in their rankings, we'll say. Obviously, they don't want to see that, but maybe as a fan, you want to see some different teams up there in the top 10. I know a lot of people are pushing for UCF. UCF is right outside of the picture, and they're always competitive. Obviously, they play small schools too, so we're not going to get into that either. But my point being that these SEC giants, they end up in these high rankings. They end up with so many in the top 10, mainly because at the start of the season, they don't play very big names.
Yeah, well, I would love to hear more discussion on this, but we have exhausted our time for this segment. We're halfway home here on Game Day U as kickoff between Oklahoma and Texas Tech approaches. When we come back, Christian and the rest of the remote team take a spin around the Big 12. Plus, the only 4-0 football team in the state of Texas isn't a Big 12 team at all, but are they for real? Stay with us as Game Day U continues.
We talked about the Longhorns, a little bit earlier in the show. Coming off the loss to LSU, they took on Oklahoma State. It was a back-and-forth affair for 3 quarters until Sam Ehlinger took control. The Pokes rode Chuba Hubbard to a 23-21 second-half lead. Hubbard ended up carrying the ball 37 times for Okie State in this game, but then 2 touchdown passes from Ehlinger put this game on ice. A valiant comeback effort from the Cowboys comes up short, and Texas takes the victory 36-20. A solid, if unspectacular, performance from Sam Ehlinger. He goes 20 for 28, 281 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. The Longhorn secondary was able to contain Tylan Wallace, holding him to a season-low 83 yards on 5 catches. Guys, what do we take away from this one? Tylan Wallace, 5 catches, 83 yards. Not a bad performance. Could have been better.
I mean, heck, if his season low is 83 yards, that's pretty impressive.
That's not bad.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, he's a monster.
I'll take a season low of 83 yards.
Yeah.
I'll take a season high of 83 yards, really.
I'll just run it. I was about to say, I don't know if I could run 83 yards.
I'll take an opportunity to run out in the field.
True. I mean, takeaway from this game for me, obviously, Texas comes away from the victory, and like I said earlier, history favors the victor. But Oklahoma State could have won this game, you know. And I think what they proved to a lot of people, and I had kind of talked about this earlier in the year. Oklahoma State's for real. I mean, they are not a bad football team, and they looked young. They looked inexperienced. I mean, Spencer Sanders is going to get better the longer he's able to play out there. But that football team is good, and they're going to surprise some people this year. And I think their their total was 6, which has them missing a bowl game. And I don't think there's any way they miss out on bowl season again under Mike Gundy. Like we said, Sam Ehlinger was efficient, if not spectacular. I mean, I think that's kind of the role that he's filling. I mean, people kind of expected him to come in and be a Heisman contender. And that's just not the quarterback he is. He's not that good. At the end of the day, he's not a spectacular guy. He's going to be a great backup quarterback in the NFL. He'll probably play a couple times when Drew Brees hurts his thumb again. But, you know, like he's not a spectacular. He's not a Heisman winner. Like, he's not a star that you look to win you a football game. He is the kind of guy who doesn't lose you a football game.
I think Sam might disagree here on this one. He was speaking pretty highly of Sam.
You know,
Ehlinger
I think Sam Ehlinger is a great college player. I think he is. I think he has shown a lot of improvement throwing the ball. He reminds me a little bit. He's kind of a game manager, but with more arm talent, I would say.
Yeah.
And that arm talent has definitely progressed over the years. The one thing that stood out to me, I mean, you talked about how Oklahoma State could come back and win this game, but I think that's also more of an indictment on Texas and the fact that they're able to let players get back in the game. Yes, they lost those 3 DBs throughout the course of the game, like I talked about, but it's not like Spencer Sanders went off, like Christian said, 268 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks.
Two bad picks, if I will say.
They
were
ugly.
Yes, they were.
Right into the hands of the Texas defender.
Yeah.
I mean, Chuba Hubbard ran 37 times for 121 yards, not even getting 4 yards per carry. So the run defense was spectacular. It seems like the passing defense was pretty solid, and yet we look at the scoreboard and it's 36-30, and you're wondering, okay, what went wrong here?
I mean, they gave up 498 yards, which is something I kind of talked about earlier. Like, this defense, to me, and you said they have a lot of injuries, is not the same defensive unit, the scary defensive unit that it has been. I mean, Texas in the past has been a unit that kind of struck fear in the hearts of Big 12 when you line up across from them, because I mean the Big 12 defenses are porous to say the least. But Texas, historically, the past few years, they have been bad. in the past 5 years, but their defense has been solid, and half the reason they won half their games the past 5 years is because their defense was good. And now it's kind of a little bit more balanced, but I think a lot of people thought that defense would keep that level that they had, and they just haven't. And the offense has taken a step forward. I agree that Ellinger is better than he was last year, but it's still not spectacular enough to win them games the way that Kyler and Baker did for the Sooners in previous years.
I want to take a step back and let's look at OSU. Let's talk about this field goal or whatever it was.
This is the best. This is the highlight of the game.
Gundy. I mean, man, that was the nail in the coffin. I think watching that, I was so thoroughly confused.
Yeah.
I was like, I just don't. I get that in a
Chandler's trying to explain it now.
of innovation.
Trying to be civil. Yeah.
Football is becoming more innovative. Guys are getting tricky. I get it.
Trying to reason with Gundy now.
But like,
You gotta find some sort of.
Can't reason with a mullet, man.
I mean, it was just so rough to watch. It was so rough to watch. And then, I don't know. I have to give it to Texas for holding Tuba. I mean, that guy is a beast. Like, he is just a beast.
He's going to play on Sundays. Talking about someone who's going to play in the NFL. That guy's getting drafted, and he's been drafted early.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree. I just think that I feel like Texas and OSU are really on the same level, and it's almost like their inefficiencies are different, but they equal up to be the same kind of level of inefficiency. I think that, and Gundy talked about it at Big 12 Media Days, that last season, a lot of the plays he's called weren't good, and it cost them a lot of wins. And we're seeing that bleed over into this season now, especially with whatever the heck that field goal kick thing was. But I have to also give it to OSU for Sam had his first interception that we've seen. And so I was impressed by the OSU defense, I think, more than anything coming from that game.
Yeah, I agree. And there were inefficiencies as well in the TCU game. Guys, switching gears, the Pony Express is back.
Oh,
That's
boy.
right. SMU is 4-0, coming off a statement win over a nationally ranked TCU team. At the forefront of it all is a former Longhorn. You may recall that junior quarterback Shane Buechele. Haven't heard that name in a while. Couldn't cut it in Austin, so he goes up the road, puts on the Mustang red and blue, and balls out. He threw for 288 yards and 2 scores in this contest as the Mustangs had their way with the Horned Frogs defense. They had to sweat it out at the end, but SMU survives and leaves Fort Worth with a huge road victory. Now the Mustangs are on one of the old Southwest Conference teams. They wanted to join the Big 12 during a realignment a few years back, but the Big 12 didn't reciprocate the interest in the slightest. So what better way to prove your mettle to a conference that rejected you than beating one of its more successful programs? Guys, does this win say anything about SMU, or is this more about the Horned Frogs? What's going on here?
I mean, I guess you have to do a little bit of both. I mean, it's the battle for the Iron Skillet. Obviously, the coolest trophy in college football, because you can literally fry your breakfast on it the next day. I mean,
It keeps giving back.
It was a fun game. It is a trophy that keeps on giving. I love it. I mean, Shane Buechele, geez Louise. I turned on that game and I'm like, does Shane Buechele have a little brother that is playing for SMU now? Shane Buechele, the guy who can hold a jockstrap for Sam Ellinger in Texas, is now playing for SMU and made TCU's defense, Gary Patterson's esteemed unit, looked like garbage. They looked like trash. And he gave up 288 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception for Shane Buechele. I mean, I don't think he did that ever for Texas. I mean, I'm sure he did, but it's a quality of opponent against TCU. It was an impressive win for SMU, but TCU to me, while the defense looked bad, I trust their defense to get more on track than that offense did. And, I mean, Max Dugan, 188 yards, 3 touchdowns looked nice, but a 39.2 QBR. And he really didn't throw all that often. I mean, they ran the ball for 200-plus yards, which clearly to me means they don't trust him. On the last drive of the game, they ran 4 plays. 2 of them were runs. In the final minute of the game, if you're running twice in your own territory, needing to score late in the game like that, that means to me you don't trust your quarterback. Yeah. And TCU has always lived and died. While they've always had a consistent defense, they live and die and they succeed when they have a great quarterback. And I feel like that's kind of redundant because everyone succeeds when you have a great quarterback. But TCU more than any has struggled to find that guy. They struggled to have that, and I don't think they have it. And It's kind of just continuing a tradition in the Big 12. As soon as one team gets in the top 25, they get beat the next week and get kicked right back out. So we'll see how Kansas State fares this week against Oklahoma State. But at TCU looked bad. But I think it's more of an indictment to me on TCU's porous defense, which I think came as a shock to most people than it did SMU's successful offense.
Charlotte, what do you think?
I think it definitely has more to say about TCU. I mean, I'm going to butcher this name, but Sewo Alanalua. He was a hot mess. I mean, we got a fumble. He got sacked when they needed him the most, and had 6 yards lost on that play. I mean, there was no clickage for me, obviously, for the TCU offense, and you're right, there really honestly never is. But I think that you can't go into a game and have a quarterback that missed 20 of the 36 throws he made.
Oof.
I mean, you can't make anything happen with that, and that's why they had to run it. I think that having the running back, Siwu, also not being able to get it done. I mean, what are your options if you can't pass or run the ball?
It's tough. It's not pretty. I promise you that.
No, yeah. I mean,
Clearly the Wildcat didn't work either.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, this team is young, they're inexperienced, especially on the offensive side of the ball, like you said. Max Dugan looked like the answer. I mean, he looks like the answer over Alex Delton, the Kansas State transfer, who hasn't been much better, who we all knew could run the ball but still can't throw it, which we always knew at Kansas State. And now this team just doesn't seem like they have an identity right now. And it's not going to get any easier for them going into conference play. The defense has been vaunted in the past. They lost their best 2 defensive ends. They have one of the best corners in the country in Jeff Gladney, but other than that, they're not getting a lot of help on that side. And so this is going to be this next month or so is going to be crucial for Gary Patterson and the squad going into conference play, trying to start out strong, so hopefully they can get back into the national landscape a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that quarterback battle was very interesting to see, and it's kind of clear to me that they really don't have any cohesion or any identity at this point. But when we return, Brooke Mursky and the studio team take a look at who's real, TCU is not, I think we've established that, and who are pretenders. Don't go anywhere.
Back with you in Gaylord Hall Studios. I'm Brooke Mursky here alongside Dylan Rivera, Caroline Grace, and Zach Verdia. We are 1 month into the 2019 college football season, and there are already some powerhouse programs with their playoff hopes on life support. So guys, it's time to stick a fork in them. This is our The Fork segment for the first time. I want you guys to tell me if you think that these teams can make it in the college football playoff. So let's start with Notre Dame. Zach, what do you got?
All right, to start the segment, I will not be using the fork. I am not sticking a fork in Notre Dame. I just think that their schedule coming up is favorable. They have to get by Virginia today, which will be big. But their pass defense is pretty strong, 157.3 yards per game. They have 3 picks, 12 pass deflections. They haven't played crazy good quarterbacks, but they just played Jake Fromm and didn't give up too many points. So their pass defense is good. But I think Ian Book can bounce back from the loss with these defenses he faces. I mean, Virginia, then he plays Bowling Green State, Michigan, Virginia Tech, Duke, Navy, just teams that you normally see Notre Dame playing with the ability to schedule whoever they want. But I think they need to fix a few things, but I'm not ready to stick a fork in them just yet.
Well, have the Fighting Irish finally been exposed? Have they finally lived up to the hype that they're overrated? The answer is yes. The whole country is glad to see that they finally lost early in the season. They started off hot against Georgia and got the ball on their own punt return, but you know what? Lightning doesn't strike twice. But come on, same story, different year, people. I think they have good individual players. I think they got exposed early this year, unlike most in the past. I think this game just shows that they can't compete with the best in the country, and I think that it's time for someone else to have a try at this. I mean, they don't even play in a conference game, and I know the whole point of the college football playoff was let's get the 4 best teams in, but when you have a schedule like Notre Dame has had the past couple of years, there's just nothing I see that backs them up. I can put in a 1-loss SEC team over them any day of the week.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not ready to say that Notre Dame's out of the picture. I don't think that they are that top team that's guaranteed to get in, but I just can't say it yet that they are out of it. That's the main thing for me. So for Notre Dame, I mean, obviously they played Georgia just a couple of days ago, it feels like now. But it was a tough game for them, and Georgia is a tough opponent. I will adhere to that, and I think Georgia is one of those teams that could almost be slid right into the playoff picture, and nobody would say a word. So Notre Dame also has Virginia this week, who is a ranked team. It's number 18 in the nation. They have USC still to come and Michigan still to come. So you kind of talked about some of their easier opponents. The way I look at it, those are three of those opponents that maybe the College Football Playoff Committee looks at and says, well, if they can take down those three guys, maybe they do deserve to be in the playoff picture. Ian Book is 9th in points responsible for. Ian Book's a great quarterback. I think he is one of those game managers. I actually take back the word great. I don't think he's great. I think he's good. A good quarterback, Ian Book. And then Drew White is a great defensive player, 17th in the country in tackles for loss right now. So Notre Dame's got it on both sides of the ball, and so I'm not ready to take them out of the playoff picture just yet.
Yeah, I like what you guys got. So let's move to another team. What about Washington?
Washington, I think I am going to fork Washington. Off the Cal loss, I don't think they'll bounce back. I think they'll lose at least one more Pac-12 game. Not really sure which one, because, I mean, it's Pac-12, so you never know. But they play USC tonight. They have to survive that one with the hero, Matt Fink. And then they play Oregon still at home. Then they play Utah. They play at Colorado. They finish the year with Washington State. Not that those teams are great by any means or anything, but I just feel like that they'll stumble at least one more time. And with the one loss, I'm not even sure if they win out and win the Pac-12, they'll probably be in the college football playoff. But I think that we'll have to see how everything else plays out, because Washington, even if they win out, which I don't think they will, could still not make it. So I'm going to put a fork in Washington.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Washington is that team that every year I just want them to be the underdog that comes out on top. But unfortunately, I think those days are long gone. I'm going to have to stick a fork in Washington. I think both their offense and defense are just about as average as it gets, coming up just a point short to Cal. I haven't been impressed with them yet, and they just don't look like a complete team. They're not playing like a complete team. I see them possibly beating USC today, I'll give that to them, but losing down the road to Oregon as well as Utah, possibly Washington State. If Washington State gets it together, I'm going to have to say I stick a fork in them as well.
Well, I'm not ready to say it yet. It's the same thing for me. I guess I'm the nice guy at the table. So I'm not ready to say it just yet. It's the same case as with Notre Dame. I'm really close to Washington, though. Notre Dame it was close for me, but Washington, it's insanely close. I am just one slip up away from saying they're out of it. You said that they have one loss against Cal. You mentioned those points, and I understand that is going to be detrimental to their playoff hopes, but at the same time, it was a 1-point loss. It's not like they lost by an astronomical number, and we're talking about they couldn't compete in the game. It was a 1-point loss. It was a game-winning field goal. Jacob Eason, to me, is a great quarterback. Came out of Georgia. He transferred over to Washington. A lot of people forget that he was there at Georgia, and he was a successful quarterback for the Bulldogs. But now over there in Washington, he's looking like a great quarterback again. He's looking like that same quarterback he was at Georgia. And right now, he has them at the 33rd in total offense, which isn't great by any means, but it's getting there. And it's still working out the kinks of being a new quarterback in a new system and a transfer quarterback. And then on top of that, the total defense, I believe they are 41st in total defense, which if you guys would say LSU is a playoff contender, they're just a few spots in front of them.
Before we go to break, I want to talk one more team. How about Michigan? Before you get into any discussion, let's hear from each of you. Fork or no fork?
Fork, yes.
Fork.
Absolutely fork.
Okay, tell me why.
Pretty simple. Shea Patterson, I mean, you can start there. He's got 55% completion, only has the one interception so far, but I mean, just bad quarterback play. Two quarterback systems never work, so even if they tried to keep throwing McCaffrey in there, they just don't see it working.
Yeah, they should have been exposed week 2. I mean, I'm glad that they got exposed sooner rather than later, like most years, but Wisconsin just created a downhill spiral for them. Their defense struggles in the red zone time after time. Any speedy offense can drive the ball down their throat. And to be quite honest, I see them losing to possibly Rutgers. I know that's a hot take, but Iowa, Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan State, and Shea Patterson is unimpressive. So Yeah, their season's done for me. I mean, look at this. People just drive the ball down their throat, and I know everyone's made the argument that the same thing happened with Oklahoma and Army, but I want to remind you that it was more of a back-and-forth game. Army ran all over Michigan. Oh, it came down to the kicker. If the kicker would have just made the field goal and not gone into overtime, but I'm just going to have to stick a fork in Michigan, and hopefully we're not banking on the Ohio State game like we usually do every year.
Well, I'm also forking them, and if you remember, first week of this show, we had somebody sitting at this desk say Shea Patterson was a Heisman candidate. Let me tell you some of the numbers for Shea Patterson, okay? 108th in completion percentage, 70th in passing touchdowns, 96th in passing yards.
Yikes.
He's nearly triple digits in every single one of them and is triple digits in one of them. Garbage. So, I mean, it's not there for Shea Patterson. His Michigan team is just not good. 95th in total offense, 47th in total defense. They are not a contender by any means. Harbaugh, since taking over at Michigan, 8-11 versus ranked opponents, 1-3 as a bowl record, 1-9 versus top 10 teams, and 0-4 versus Ohio State. We are now getting into the conversation of, is this Jim Harbaugh's last season at Michigan?
It should be.
Should be for sure. I mean, we're all in agreement. We're forking Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, both of them.
Honestly, it does kind of upset me that we have so many good teams in one conference, and we have so many teams that have the opportunity to be good, but they're just not. And, you know, when Michigan goes down, that kind of ruins. It hurts the whole Big Ten conference. And so, I mean, they're going to have to fix something. Michigan's got to get back on top so we can have some more interesting college football play.
Agreed. Well, that's it for the Fork right now. About a half an hour to go this morning on Game Day U. When we return, final words, call-outs, and score predictions from Christian, Sam, Shiloh, and William, plus a little study session on the Red Raiders game plan. We'll be right back.
For the hebdomadal section of the show, occurring weekly,
big word.
we've got final words, call-outs, and score prediction. Guys, what do you got?
Hold on. I'm gonna see how I can spell hebdomadal first.
I think I need to look that word up before I answer.
Jeez, all right. Well,
I'm telling you, Google is a powerful tool. I'm telling you, just check it out.
Big name Christian over here. Jeez.
All right, well,
talking about Madeline.
I'm so
I know,
distracted.
we're going to call
So I guess my call-out, I'll start with the secondary. This is a unit that has, to be quite frank, looked terrible against Texas Tech in recent years, and honestly, they need to be better if Oklahoma is going to take that next step. Over the past 4 years, they've given up 1,500 passing yards to 4 different Texas Tech quarterbacks, which is just sad, honestly. 1,500 yards in 3 years, that's terrible. So my call out to the secondary, you got to be better.
My call out has to be Kennedy Brooks. It's just looking at him and looking at the play that Trey Sermon has. If you compare the two, it's almost like they have swapped roles. And it's weird because Kennedy Brooks he's older. He should be the leader. He should be leading the running backs and showing them what it's supposed to look like. And he gets it done, and he's really great at picking up the short yardage. But when it comes to anything really crucial, I feel like he just kind of fizzles out. And I need him to be more of a leader, be more of an option for OU. I think that with 2 strong backs, a lot can happen. And Trey Sermon's putting in the work. We can see it. It's happening. He's making the big plays that he needs to be making. And now it's time for Kennedy Brooks to step up and say, all right, this young guy's showing me up. I got to start showing out.
Yeah, definitely one of the knocks on Kennedy Brooks is his explosiveness, his ability to get out of the gate, break out of the gate, and bust out a big run. I'm going to switch over to the defense for my pick, and I'm going to go a little bit out there with my pick. I'm going to call out Kenneth Murray, the captain of the defense, K9. I'm calling you out. Wow. Now let's go through the numbers here. In 2018, through 3 games, Kenneth Murray had 47 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. So far this year through 3 games, 22 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and half a sack. Now, obviously, the 3rd game was the Army game where he racked up 28 tackles and God knows how many tackles for loss. But since this year, he's kind of fallen back a little bit. You see these players break out, young guys like Jaden Davis, Jalen Redmond and Ronnie Perkins that break out. And Kenneth Murray has kind of gone under the carpet a little bit. He's the leader of the defense, and we all know that. That's unquestioned. He's the unquestioned leader of that unit. But in terms of the play on the field, he's got to step it up. And this is a big opportunity against a Texas Tech offense that's going to be without their starting quarterback that needs a guy in there to really impose what the defense is all about. And I think Kenneth Murray needs to be that guy today.
Yeah, and I agree. I think he will be, especially with a backup quarterback and a lackluster offensive line. I really think he's going to be able to take advantage.
He's got all the talent in the world.
My call out, Callum Sutherland, guy. Come on, you had one bye week. You had a week off, and you get a public intoxication charge. Yeah. Come on, man. It's not like you're the rock of this team. You're 2 for 4 on the season so far. You've got one job, kick the football. You're not even doing that well. I mean, I can't blame you because I wouldn't be any better. But I really expect to see a huge improvement because we're going to need you come Big 12 play. Lincoln Riley said he's going to deal with this internally, so I don't expect to see you missing any serious play because of it. But we're going to need you. So come on, step it up. Let's see it.
I think this is funny. This might be good publicity for him. I think this is the first time the words Callum Sutherland have been said on this show.
I don't know. Week 1, we were talking about it.
After the 2
But it wasn't
goals.
good.
Yeah, true.
I mean, you're just kicking a horse while it's down at that point.
Well, intoxicated.
It's harsh.
Harsh. It's tough. Guys, final words for the week. What do you got?
So my final word is strike, and here's why. I think this team needs to strike fear in the hearts of Big 12 opponents this week. They're coming into a game that they should win. It's a 27.5-point spread. Clearly, it's a game that you're supposed to win and win big. If they come out and are stumbling out of the gates, it's going to be tough for the rest of the Big 12 to see this team as something that needs to be feared rather than a team that can be beaten. You start strong, you make the rest of the Big 12 see that you are who you say you are and the undisputed favorite to win this conference.
Not a doubt in my mind.
I like that. That's a good word.
Back to back.
Alrighty, well, my word has to be awaken, and that means that I want y'all to wake up. It's been a bye week. Y'all got to get out there. It's Big 12 play. It's do or die time. And also we talked about at the beginning of the show, the bye week, what everyone was needing to work on. Those specifics, the O-line, defense, special teams, etc. Y'all got to wake up and be here. Y'all have to, now is the time where putting on a half performance and not really giving it your all just isn't enough. You need to wake up and let's play some football.
Let's get it.
Let's play the beast, baby.
I'm ready.
My final word's going to be along the lines of Sule. My final word's going to be notice, as in this defense has a chance to put the rest of the conference on notice. Now, even though they've shown some improvements in their first 3 games, they've definitely taken steps. A lot of people are still not completely sold on this team because of who they played so far. I mean, a 1-2 Houston team, South Dakota, and then UCLA, who did squeak out of Washington State with a thriller of a win.
Got that done, baby.
But I mean, they didn't look good against Oklahoma's defense. So Texas Tech's got some more weapons on that offense, obviously without their quarterback. But at the same time, if you allow them to stick around for a little bit, you're not putting the conference on notice. Put the conference on notice, get out early, and don't let up. Don't let up. Please don't let up.
Wow, you guys final words so far. It makes me feel like I'm in a locker room listening to Tim Tebow.
Wow.
I'm ready to run out the field.
I'm ready to run through a brick wall right now.
Let's go. Seriously. All right, my final word, is going to have to be open. I think you guys need to open the Big 12 play strong. When you start Big 12 conference play, and any conference, it's almost like a revival of a season, and it helps that we had a bye week, but I need you guys to open Big 12 play strong and let everyone, as you guys say, let everyone know we're coming to play and we're for real. Right now, the score prediction, not score prediction, but the spread is OU's favored by 27.5. I'm a betting man. I'm sure a lot of the viewers are at home as well. What do you guys bet? Should I bet on this game? Should I bet for OU to cover the spread?
2019 is the year of overbets only.
That's what I've been doing, and I've been miserably wrong on a lot of them. So, Sue, I need your advice. What you got for me?
So in this game, I'm definitely taking Oklahoma to win it. I have a final score prediction of 49-28, which does not cover the spread, and here's why. I don't think our offense is going to have problems, but there is a reason why I suggested that this team needs to strike fear, because they have failed to do so in previous years. And in the 4 straight back-to-back Big 12 championships, the defenses looked tough. They've looked miserable, and they have yet to play a team that's offense is worthy of saying that they can test this unit. And while Texas Tech is beat up, and while they are going to run a quarterback out there who is not their first man, this team has given Oklahoma fits in the past, and I think that they'll put up some numbers, and then Oklahoma will pull away in the second half.
Well, I would have to say that I'm also with you on betting on Oklahoma. I think that they're going to take this win for sure. I think you have to be kind of crazy not to think so. And I think they're going to take it home 49-20. They don't have their QB1 for Texas Tech, and I think that's really going to hurt them. However, I think that this is going to be the strongest defense that OU has gone up against so far. I think that they might be able to hold them in that points a little bit tighter than anyone else has been able to. But at the end of the day, I think they might let them have a couple touchdowns or so, but I don't think that it's going to give Sooner fans a worry or a doubt at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to keep the trend going. I'm going to go with Oklahoma for my pick as well, 48-17. I think that obviously, like Shiloh said, with Alan Bowman out, Judd Duffy, Jackson Tyner, whichever one gets the start, really isn't. They're not Alan Bowman. And it sucks for the kid because he's been injured last year as well, missed the game against Oklahoma, missed the second half because of a collapsed lung for the second straight time. But this defense has got to be able to take advantage of that, and I think they will. I think the defensive line has been very disruptive this year, and with the bye week, being able to prepare for a very experienced Tech offensive line, I think they will win that matchup in the trenches. The offense is going to keep rolling, and Oklahoma's going to cruise.
Yeah, following suit here, I don't think anyone within the state lines of Oklahoma thinks that Texas Tech is going to come away with a win.
No. But there's a couple people in Stillwater that might be hoping.
No, even the Texas Tech people that came in.
I don't think they genuinely believe that deep down. They
Wanting
might say
something and believing it are two different
I
things.
agree. But I'm going to have to go with the final score of 56-17. I think the Sooners got an opportunity to hang up half 100. Lincoln Riley's had a lot of time. 56-21, where Lincoln Riley's had a lot of opportunity and a lot of downtime to really discuss and think about plays he wants to run in this Texas Tech offense and things he wants to do in the back half of this season. So I think it's really not going to be close. I'm going to have to go with 56-21.
He's going with all the high-scoring games.
Yeah, I got to. In the past, I've gone with the under, and I've always been wrong, so I might as well just blast the over. Let's see.
Yeah, Oklahoma covers.
Yeah. And after this, Parker Thune gets an opportunity to meet up with one football staff writer over at the OU Daily. Stick around for it.
Hey, what's up, Sooner fans? It's time to hit the books here on Game Day. Parker Thune, alongside OU football beat reporter Vic Reynolds. Vic, have you ever read The Intelligence Establishment by Harry Howe Ransom?
I have not.
You know what? That's okay, because we're here to hit the books on the Red Raiders as Texas Tech comes to town. So let's dive right in. Obviously, the Sooners coming off the bye week. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Lincoln Riley, nonetheless, has shown himself to be an innovator over the years. So do you expect anything drastically different scheme-wise from the Sooners in this game as we've seen over the past 3 games?
I don't think it's going to be anything drastically different, but if you look at Texas Tech's defense, the thing that they do really well is make interceptions. If you remember last year in Lubbock, they picked off Kyler Murray twice in the first quarter. A couple weeks back, they grabbed 2 interceptions off Arizona's Khalil Tate. So the secondary is really strong, but their run defense isn't quite as strong. So I think what you're going to see is a lot more running the ball than what we've seen the past couple weeks. You're going to see maybe a lot more from the running backs than what we've seen. Some Trey Sermon, Kennedy Brooks, Ramondre Stevenson, obviously Jalen Hurts is going to get a lot of yards on the ground as well. But I don't think it's going to be anything drastically different.
Tell me about Judd Duffy. He steps in relief of the injured Alan Bowman. What do you expect from Duffy in this game? What does he bring to the table, and how do the Sooners minimize his impact?
Yeah, I think a lot of Sooner fans are a little kind of relieved to see Bowman not on the other side of the field because he tore up OU secondary in the first half of last year's game. He's been killing it this year, and so they're probably relieved they don't have to see the passer that Bowman is. But Duffy, he's not nearly as good as Bowman, but he put up a lot of points on OU's defense in the second half in Lubbock last year, and he can run the ball a lot. He's a lot more mobile than Bowman is. He can't quite pass as well, but he's dangerous as well.
So on the offensive side of the football for the Red Raiders, give me one of Duffy's weapons that in your mind has to have a really big game in order for the Red Raiders to keep this game close. Who's the X factor?
Yeah, that guy's definitely TJ Vasher, who's a wide receiver for Texas Tech. He's been their leading receiver this year. He wasn't their top guy last year, but he contributed a lot. And the biggest thing for him is that he's tall. He's 6'6", and for OU secondary, they don't have that height that maybe Alex Grinch wants. The tallest cornerback is Parnell Motley at 6'1". He's probably going to be the guy that's checking Vasher most of the game. He runs really well, he catches pretty well, and the height difference is he makes him a scary deep threat for the OU secondary.
Word on the street is that Trajan Bridges is taking reps with the secondary. Do you think we see a cameo from him defensively?
Yeah, we might see some Bridges. I would expect to see a lot more Pat Fields, Delarian Turner-Yell, and Justin Broyles as opposed to Bridges. But they're really, Alex Grinch is big on subbing a lot, playing a lot of guys, and that safety position really just isn't very deep. They're not even, Robert Barnes started the last 8 games last season. We haven't seen nearly any of him all year. So if, an injury happens, if Fields or Turner-Yell and Broyles aren't playing very well, we might see Bridges, but I wouldn't expect you to see him take the field starting or even in the first half unless OU has a healthy lead.
All right, Vic, what's your final score prediction for this game today?
Yeah, I think OU's gonna. Might not be the highest scoring game they've had over the last couple years under Lincoln Riley, but they're still gonna put a lot of points on the board. They're gonna control the clock with running. I think they're probably gonna put up 45 points roughly, and then Texas Tech, they're a good offense, and I know Grinch has kind of changed the defense a little bit in Norman, but Texas Tech is still formidable. So I think we'll probably put up around 24.
Vic, thanks so much for taking the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. Thank you
We
for having me.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now we'll send you back out to Christian, Sam, Shiloh, and William. Guys, take it away.
We apologize for the technical difficulties. Great stuff there from Parker and Victor, guys. This game, we got kickoff an hour and 15 minutes away. Do you have any closing thoughts for the game?
I mean, I expect this team to eviscerate this Texas Tech defense in the way to use that word. I'm finally going to throw it in there. I think they come away with a pretty big victory, and I hope that the defense, at the least, can come out and make some big, strong improvements coming into the Big 12 play.
I want to see some more picks from the defense for sure.
Some more?
Yes, I want more.
Never satisfied.
Also, I mean,
It's that
we
rat
talked about
poison.
it, no more complacency here.
Yeah.
And also, honestly, I'm just excited for football to be back. It doesn't matter what could happen. I'm going to love every minute of it.
Yeah, I'm looking for the matchup in the trenches. Creed Humphrey going up against Broderick Washington, guy that Lincoln Riley said was arguably one of the best defensive linemen, if not the best defensive lineman they've played so far. Definitely looking for Creed to dominate that matchup and pose himself. He's one of the best centers in the country. Today should be another opportunity for him to prove it.
Yeah, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. I'm really looking for this team to shore up on their discipline side of things. I really don't want to see as many penalties as we've seen in the past. Sule, do you have any specific player that you're looking at that you think could have a big game against Texas Tech?
I mean, I think it got like she talked about it. Interceptions. Parnell Motley has had an incredible year. He's leading the country in yards per coverage snap. He's doing an incredible job for a guy who has gotten a lot of flack over the past 3 years of his career. I expect him to have a big day against a backup quarterback and kind of establish himself in this Big 12 play.
Charlotte, real quick, what do you got?
I've got to say Charleston Rambo. I just think that his speed, man, I love to watch him run, and he has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove himself, and I think that Texas Tech will give him that opportunity.
How about Patrick Fields in the safety? The safety group has been solid, but really hasn't stood out in any way. They haven't had any interceptions so far this year. Patrick Fields is a dynamic player who's had some problem with the penalties, but if he can get over those, he should have a big day.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if Trajan Bridges, who's moved to safety in this past
Gets any playing time.
gets any playing time, especially if Oklahoma manages to get up big.
Yeah.
If my score comes true, I think we could see Trajan Bridges out there.
I'd love to watch it.
Unfortunately, that'll be it from us on the remote team. Guys, it's been a pleasure.
It's always
When we return, the studio team takes a look into the national games and all the games you should look out for. And if you're a betting person, maybe you might want to stay tuned to what they have to say.
Bet the over.
Don't go anywhere.
We've got one last segment before we call it a morning here on Game Day U. I'm Brooke Mursky alongside Dylan Rivera, Caroline Grace, and Zach Verdia. As usual, we're breaking down the top 3 matchups across college football. We'll kick off things in South Bend before heading out west and then bring it back here to Oklahoma. Let's hit it. Virginia puts their perfect record on the line against Notre Dame. As we touched on earlier, the Irish are fresh off a heartbreaking loss to Georgia, but things don't get a whole lot easier for them this week. Bronco Mendenhall's Cavaliers squad is 4-0 for the first time since 2004, and they're in the driver's seat in the ACC Coastal Division. They didn't allow a single second-half point last week against Old Dominion. Can the Hoos come to town and hand Notre Dame their second straight loss? Zach, who are you going with?
I'm going to have to go with Virginia here. I'm going with the upset. I think Bryce Perkins, the quarterback for Virginia, he's played one away game so far this year at Pitt. They won that game. He played pretty well through 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. So I think their defense, giving up 18 points a game, 75 rushing yards. I think Virginia's going to end Notre Dame's run, and it's basically putting a fork in them, going back to last segment.
Yeah, I wanted to put a fork in them too, which I did. But then again, they're coming off a hot loss from Georgia. I don't think they're just terrible. and I see them passing by this game with ease. That still doesn't mean I think they're a playoff contender, but I do see them winning this game.
Well, I said Michigan was 47th in total defense. Well, if you flip it on the total offense, that's Notre Dame. Notre Dame is 47th in total offense. But let me tell you something. Virginia is 95th in total offense, and they have played teams like Old Dominion and William and Mary. So I mean, it's different to say that you're 47th in total offense and you played some good opponents, and 95th in total offense and haven't really played anybody. So my pick is Notre Dame. I'm saying they're taking the win today and beating the Cavaliers.
Yeah, well, let's switch it to the next one. A little Pac-12 action up next. USC taking on Washington. The Trojans are somehow still afloat after injuries, and JT Daniels and Keaton Slavis. As Zach mentioned earlier, third-string signal caller Matt Fink filled in admirably last week and engineered a 30-23 victory over Utah, but he'll have a much taller task this afternoon in Seattle. The Huskies have been one of the hottest teams in the country since a 1-point loss to Cal. They blew the doors off Hawaii and BYU, and they will be looking to do the same thing to USC behind prolific passer Jacob Eason. Who walks away with it here, Zach?
I'm going to go with another upset. I'm going USC. I can't go against my hero, Matt Fink. I mean, not only hero in the game, but hero for USC. I think he'll come in a full week to prepare. He finally has the starting quarterback job that he's always wanted. I think he'll come in and he's been working with Graham Harrell all week. Seems like maybe a little bit of a quarterback guru. Not that Slovis did amazing or anything. He did throw those 3 picks against BYU, but I think Fink will come in, reignite this offense, and I think they'll take down Washington.
Yeah, I'm such an advocate for Washington, and I hate to be that way, but, hopefully that loss just fuels their fire even more, and they go down and come out on the win this weekend. But, it may just be the underdog person in me wanting them to come out on top, but we'll see.
Well, I'm also going with the Huskies. I'm taking the Huskies over USC. Washington beat BYU 45-19. And as you mentioned, USC, they had 3 picks against BYU and lost 30-27. So I'm taking the Huskies in that game. I think it should be a pretty good game and a pretty close matchup, but I'm still going with Washington.
Yeah, well, let's go with the last team. Just a few dozen miles up the road in Stillwater, Oklahoma State hosts Kansas State in prime time. The Pokes are obviously looking to rebound from the loss to Texas. Meanwhile, the Wildcats are out to prove that their hot start is no fluke. They're coming off a bye, but the last time we saw this team on the gridiron, they scored a road win over Mississippi State. That victory was K-State's first regular season win against an SEC team since, get this, 1982. The question is, with an extra week of preparation under their belt, can the Wildcat defense hold serve against a quick strike Cowboy offense? They'll have to reckon with Tylan Wallace and Chuba Hubbard. Zach, who do you like in this one?
I'm going to have to go with the road team here, Kansas State. I'm really liking their defense here. I think that they'll make Spencer Sanders throw the ball a little more, and their pass defense has been great. And then I think their run game will go right through Oklahoma State, 280 yards a game. They have 2 senior running backs in James Gilbert and Jordan Brown. I think both of them will take advantage in Stillwater, and I think Kansas State will come out on top.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see that the Big 12 teams are kind of getting back into that top 25 poll. Especially because of the, we don't play anybody kind of thing. But unfortunately, I am going to go with Oklahoma State, our in-state rival. They have a fast tempo offense, and K-State's defense is just going to crumble under pressure. And although K-State's run game may be heavy, I see Oklahoma State catching on fast to what they're doing. Oklahoma State's ready to get back on top. They started out their season really hot, went down to Austin and lost. But, just a 1 loss against Texas isn't the worst thing, considering Texas is also a 1-loss team. So if they can finish out their season strong, like I said, I'm just glad to see the Big 12 starting to get back into that 25 poll.
Well, Zach, I don't like any of your picks so far. All 3 of them, I don't like any of them. I'm going with the Pokes as well. Shout out to my mom. She's a diehard OSU fan, loyal and true. But you know what? Tylan Wallace is arguably the top receiver in the nation. Chuba Hubbard is leading the nation in running right now in rushing yards. And I talked about Jonathan Taylor earlier. He's only 9th, so Chuba Hubbard is really putting up those numbers. And Kansas State averages giving up 130-plus yards a game, and Chuba Hubbard is putting that up easy. I'm telling you, he's going to run all over this Kansas State defense, and it should be a runaway for the Pokes.
Me and James had a conversation about the Oklahoma State OU game the last show, and I thought to myself, oh, he's crazy for thinking that's going to be a game. But now I'm kind of reconsidering it, honestly. So.
Yeah. All right, guys. So the last portion of this segment, I want to talk upset picks. Zach, start us off. Who do you think is going to come out on top?
Oh, I know some people up here are going to love my pick. I'm going to go with Mississippi State over Auburn this week. I feel like Auburn, not anything that they're going to do wrong. I think Bo Nix might be the weak link of that team, obviously. But I think Auburn plays Florida after this. They play LSU, Bama, Georgia. With so many tough opponents coming up, I think that they'll overlook Mississippi State. I'm hoping that Garrett Schrader will be the starting quarterback for Mississippi State, with Tommy Stevens missed the last game and a half. The run game has changed completely. Kylan Hill, the running back, 551 yards already. That's 137 a game. I think him with Schrader, the freshman quarterback, if he's playing instead of Tommy Stevens, I think that they can have a trap game here and take down Auburn.
Two things. Number one, you're wrong. Number two, you don't have to buy into Bo Nix for the
How
Auburn
did I
team
know,
to be
Caroline?
good.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to stay out of the SEC because I tend to be long-winded when it comes to that. And I'm going to go over to the Big 10, excuse me. And we're going to talk about how bad Michigan is again this year. I'm going to go with Rutgers for the upset. I just think this game adds to the downhill spiral that Michigan's going to see this year. Rutgers going to lean on their defense as they should, and considering they have to go against Shea Patterson, I see them shutting down him and his offense.
Well, I'm taking Washington State over the Utah Utes. Utah is one of those top teams in Lee Corso even said he might make the playoffs, but I'm telling you right now, I think Washington State could come up with the upset. Playing UCLA last week, they had that late game thriller. Everybody was talking about it, that high-scoring game. But I'm still coming out with the Cougars on top. I think they have a good chance at beating the Utes.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have from the desk here today at Game Day U. We are so hyped for the game today. Boomer Sooner, thank you for watching Game Day U. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place.